The soft clinking of porcelain and the murmur of hushed conversations filled the air of the small café, a haven in the bustling city. Vincent Sinclair, the feared Mafia boss known for his ruthless reputation, walked in with an air of confidence that turned heads. He was a striking figure, tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, with sharp features and a brooding intensity that seemed to command the space around him. As he scanned the room, his gaze landed on a young man seated alone at a corner table. Rei Suzuki was absorbed in a book, his brow furrowed in concentration. Vincent felt a sudden, inexplicable pull towards him. There was something in the way Rei's dark hair fell across his forehead, the way he absent-mindedly tapped his pen against the table, that intrigued Vincent. Gathering his composure, Vincent approached the table, a charming smile playing on his lips. "Excuse me, mind if I sit here?" he asked, his voice smooth and inviting. Rei glanced up briefly, his eyes meeting Vincent's for a heartbeat before he returned to his book, offering only silence in response. Unfazed, Vincent leaned against the table, undeterred by the rejection. "You know, I've been coming to this cafe for years, and I've never seen anyone quite like you," he continued, attempting to break through Rei's apparent indifference. Again, Rei ignored him, turning a page as if Vincent were a mere whisper in the background. The tension between them hung in the air, a mix of Vincent's persistent charm and Rei's quiet resistance. Vincent was intrigued, almost amused. Most people would have been drawn in by his presence, yet here was Rei, mysterious and unyielding. "Are you really going to pretend I'm not here?" Vincent challenged, a playful glint in his eye. "I can promise I'm much more entertaining than that book." Rei finally looked up, annoyance flickering in his gaze. "I'm not interested," he said curtly, returning his attention to the pages before him. Vincent's smile widened, his fascination only deepening. "Not even for a second. What if I told you I could get you the best espresso in the city?" Still, Rei was unyielding, his focus unwavering. He could sense the underlying danger in Vincent's charm, an instinct honed by years of navigating the complexities of life. There was something about this man that felt both captivating and perilous. As much as he was intrigued by Vincent's boldness, a cautious voice in his mind warned him to keep his distance. "Look, I appreciate the offer, but I really just want to be alone right now," Rei said, his tone firm. Vincent, taken aback but not deterred, decided to take a step back, temporarily. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more beneath Rei's cool exterior. The challenge only heightened his interest. He knew he was playing a dangerous game, but the thrill of it excited him. "Fair enough," he conceded with a grin, taking a step back. "But you should know, I never give up easily." As he walked away, Vincent glanced over his shoulder, locking eyes with Rei one last time. In that brief moment, a spark ignited, a promise of something deeper that neither of them could yet comprehend. Rei watched as Vincent retreated, a strange mix of apprehension and intrigue swirling within him. He couldn't shake the feeling that this charming stranger was not someone he could afford to ignore, despite his best efforts to keep his distance. Vincent Sinclair quickly became a regular at the cafe, his presence a constant reminder of their brief yet electric encounter. Each morning he arrived at the same time, wearing a different tailored suit that accentuated his formidable aura. The barista knew his order by heart, a double shot of espresso, no sugar. But as he settled into his favorite corner table, his attention was solely focused on Rei. Rei had not returned to the cafe since the first meeting, and Vincent found himself craving another glimpse of the young man who had captivated him so completely. When he finally saw Rei walk in one afternoon, absorbed in his phone and unaware of his surroundings, Vincent's heart raced. This time he was determined to get a reaction out of him. "Hey there," Vincent called out, his voice smooth and inviting, as he approached Rei's table with his usual confidence. Rei looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes before annoyance quickly took its place. "You again?" he said, trying to maintain his composure. "Why, yes, me again," Vincent replied, a playful smirk tugging at his lips. "Is that so surprising? I thought we were starting to bond over coffee." "I'm not interested in bonding," Rei retorted, but he couldn't hide the slight blush creeping up his cheeks. Despite his words, he felt the pull of Vincent's charm. Not even for a free drink? Vincent leaned in closer, his eyes sparkling with mischief. I promise I'll behave. The tension crackled between them, a dance of flirtation and resistance. Vincent's persistent teasing was met with Ray's steadfast defiance. Each playful jab Vincent threw only seemed to draw Ray in a little more, igniting a reluctant thrill within him. As they bantered back and forth, Vincent felt a rush of adrenaline at the challenge. You know, for someone so determined to keep me at arm's length, you're quite hard to forget, he said, his tone light but his gaze serious. Maybe you should try forgetting, Ray shot back, but there was a flicker of amusement in his eyes that he couldn't suppress. Just then, the cafe door swung open, and Vincent's two bodyguards stepped inside, their expressions tense and urgent. Vincent's playful demeanor shifted instantly, a predatory focus taking over as he caught their eye. They approached him quickly, whispering something into his ear. "Boss, we need to leave now," one of them said, casting a wary glance toward the door. "There's been a situation." Vincent's expression hardened, and he nodded slightly, his mind racing with the implications. "Understood," he replied, turning back to Ray, who was observing the sudden change in Vincent's demeanor with curiosity. "I have to go," Vincent said, his voice low, tinged with disappointment. "But I'll be back, Ray. You're not getting rid of me that easily." Ray watched as Vincent stood up, the momentary spark between them, hanging in the air like an unspoken promise. "Goodbye, Vincent," he said, trying to sound indifferent, though his heart raced at the thought of their next encounter. With that, Vincent strode out of the cafe, flanked by his bodyguards, leaving Ray feeling a mix of exhilaration and unease. He couldn't shake the feeling that Vincent was a man wrapped in danger, and yet he found himself drawn to the mystery surrounding him. As he returned to his book, Ray couldn't help but think about Vincent's relentless pursuit. Was it mere flirtation, or something deeper? The question swirled in his mind, leaving him both intrigued and wary of the charming Mafia boss who had entered his life so unexpectedly. The following week, Ray found himself unable to shake the memory of Vincent Sinclair from his mind. He tried to ignore the flutter of excitement that came with each thought of the Mafia boss, but curiosity gnawed at him. What kind of man was he, really? And why was he so drawn to someone like Vincent, who seemed to live in a world fraught with danger? That evening, Ray decided to take a different route home from the cafe. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the streets washed in the glow of streetlights. He felt a little thrill in exploring a new path, even if it made him slightly uneasy. As he turned down a quieter street, the air seemed to shift, and a sense of foreboding settled over him. Suddenly, he noticed a group of men loitering on the corner, their whispers too low for him to catch, but their intent unmistakable. Ray quickened his pace, his instinct screaming at him to get away. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching him. He glanced over his shoulder and caught the eyes of one of the men, a rough-looking fellow with tattoos snaking up his arms. Recognition flashed in the man's gaze. "Look who we have here," the man sneered, stepping forward, his companions following suit. "The little bookworm from the cafe?" Ray's heart raced. He recalled the warning Vincent had given him about the dangers of his lifestyle, but he hadn't imagined it would come knocking on his door so soon. The group advanced, and panic surged through him. "Why don't you come and have a chat with us?" Another thug taunted, a predatory smile spreading across his face. I'm not interested," Ray stammered, backing away slowly, but they were closing in on him. Just as the situation began to spiral out of control, a dark figure emerged from the shadows. Vincent appeared, his presence immediately commanding attention. He was a stark contrast to the thugs, confident, poised, and undeniably powerful. His icy gaze fell on the men, and a dangerous tension filled the air. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Vincent's voice was low and steady, but the underlying menace was palpable. The rival gang members visibly flinched at his approach, their bravado wavering. The lead thug straightened, trying to assert dominance, despite the fear flickering in his eyes. "This is none of your business, Sinclair. Just a little chat with your friend here." Ray felt a rush of relief wash over him as he caught Vincent's gaze. There was no mistaking the intensity of the Mafia boss's expression. "Let him go," Vincent commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Or what?" the thug challenged, though the bravado was quickly fading under Vincent's fierce gaze. Vincent took a step closer, his body radiating an intimidating energy. "You really want to find out? I promise you'll regret it." With a resigned glance at his companions, the lead thug huffed, "We'll be watching you, Suzuki." They turned and walked away, leaving Rei trembling in the aftermath. Vincent turned his attention to Rei, concern etched across his features. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice softening. Rei swallowed hard, still shaken. I'm fine," he managed, though he could feel his heart racing. "Thank you for saving me." Vincent stepped closer, his presence both comforting and electrifying. "I told you before, you're not safe alone," he said, a note of urgency creeping into his voice. "You need to be more careful. My enemies are ruthless, and they've seen you with me." "I didn't think you—" Rei started, but Vincent interrupted, his expression firm. "Never underestimate the dangers that come with my world," he said, his gaze intense. "You matter to me, and I won't let anything happen to you." In that moment, Rei felt an unexpected warmth spread through him at Vincent's words. The Mafia boss's fierce protectiveness stirred something deep inside him, making him realize just how much he wanted to trust Vincent, even in the face of the chaos that surrounded them. "Maybe I should take you home," Vincent offered, his voice softer now, the danger of the moment receding. Rei nodded, grateful yet conflicted. As they walked side by side, he couldn't help but feel a strange, bereaved sense of comfort in Vincent's presence, despite the chaos of their circumstances. That evening marked a turning point in Rei's understanding of Vincent. He wasn't just a charming stranger. He was a man shaped by a dangerous world, fiercely protective of those he cared about. And for Rei, that realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. After the harrowing encounter with Vincent's rivals, Rei returned to his apartment feeling shaken, but relieved. The warmth of the shower washed away the remnants of fear, but it couldn't completely erase the tension that hung in the air. As he stood under the hot water, he replayed the events of the night in his mind, his heart still racing at the thought of how close he had come to danger. Once dry and dressed, Rei settled onto his couch, hoping to distract himself with a book. But his thoughts kept drifting back to Vincent, the way he had protected him, the fierce determination in his eyes. It was also intoxicating and terrifying. Just as he began to lose himself in the pages, a loud bang echoed through his apartment. The noise jolted him from his thoughts, and a chill ran down his spine. He glanced at the door, heart pounding. Another bang, louder this time, followed by shouting, "Open up! We know you're in there!" Panic surged within him as he recognized the voices. The same men from earlier had come for him. He grabbed his phone and raced toward the bathroom, locking the door behind him, just as the front door splintered under their force. "Rei, let us in!" one of them shouted, the urgency in his voice sending chills through Rei's bones. Breathless, Rei dialed Vincent's number, praying he would answer. As the phone rang, he could hear the men moving through his apartment, their voices growing louder. "Come on, you little coward. You can't hide forever." The call connected, and Rei's voice shook as he spoke. "Vincent, help me. They're here. They're—" Before he could finish, the bathroom door flew open. The men burst in, their faces twisted with menace. One of them lunged forward, snatching the phone from Rei's trembling hands. "Look who we found!" he sneered as he yanked Rei out of the bathroom, dragging him toward the living room. "No! Let go of me!" Rei shouted, panic surging through him as he struggled against their grip. Just as fear began to overwhelm him, the front door swung open again, and Vincent stormed in, a whirlwind of anger and determination. "Get your hands off him!" he bellowed, his presence immediately commanding the room. The men froze, surprised by Vincent's sudden arrival. Their bravado faltered under the weight of his fierce gaze. "You really thought you could come here and threaten him?" Vincent's voice was cold, deadly. In an instant the atmosphere shifted. Vincent advanced, and the men began to retreat, realizing they were outmatched. A scuffle broke out as Vincent fought to protect Rei, and in a matter of moments the men fled, disappearing into the night. Breathing heavily, Vincent turned to Rei, his expression shifting from fury to concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, taking a step closer. Rei nodded, though he felt shaky and vulnerable. I think so," he stammered, still reeling from the chaos. Vincent's demeanor softened as he took in the fear in Rei's eyes. "This is exactly what I was afraid would happen," he said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "You can't stay here. You need to come live with me at the mansion for your safety." Rei's heart raced at the proposal, but he quickly shook his head. "No, Vincent. I can't do that. I don't want to be pulled into your world. I need my independence." "Your independence isn't worth risking your life," Vincent shot back, frustration lacing his words. "You don't understand how dangerous this is. They will come after you again, and I can't just stand by and let that happen." "I appreciate what you've done for me, but I'm not going to hide away in your mansion like a prisoner," Rei replied firmly, his voice trembling with determination. "I refuse to be a part of this." Vincent's jaw clenched, and he took a step toward Rei, the tension in the air palpable. "I don't have time to argue about this," he said, his tone brokering no disagreement. "I'm taking you with me, whether you like it or not." Before Rei could protest, Vincent moved swiftly, wrapping an arm around his waist and lifting him off the ground. "What are you doing? Put me down!" Rei exclaimed, squirming in Vincent's grip. "Too late for that," Vincent replied, a mix of determination and protectiveness in his voice. "You need protection, and I'm not leaving you here. I won't allow you to be a target because of me." Rei felt a whirlwind of emotions, fear, frustration, and a strange thrill at Vincent's resolve. Despite his protests, there was an undeniable part of him that longed for Vincent's safety, for the assurance that he would be shielded from the dangers that loomed. As they stepped out into the night, Rei glanced back at his apartment, knowing he was leaving behind his life as he knew it. But with Vincent by his side, the stakes had changed.